When you step into your power as a woman of value, you don't waste your energy fighting battles that drain you. You don't let toxic people define how you think, feel, or live. You women know their worth. They don't chase, they don't argue, and they don't get dragged into someone else's chaos. Instead, they set boundaries with quiet strength, protect their peace, and respond with clarity and confidence. That's not weakness, it's strategy. And today, I'm going to show you exactly how you women handle toxic people without losing their power, without lowering their standards, and without ever becoming toxic themselves. Boundaries are not walls you build to shut people out. They are lines you draw to protect the best parts of yourself. You women understand that without boundaries, you hand other people the keys to your peace of mind, your emotional energy, and even your self-worth. Toxic people thrive where there are no limits. They look for cracks, places where they can step in and take control, manipulate, or drain you. That's why the first and most critical step in dealing with them is establishing and maintaining strong boundaries. A boundary is not a request, it's a standard. It's not you asking someone to treat you better. It's you showing them how you will and will not allow yourself to be treated. This is why boundaries are power. They are not about controlling the other person, but about controlling your own environment and your response. When a you woman sets a boundary, she is saying, "This is the standard I hold for myself, and if you cannot meet it, then you cannot stay in my space." That confidence changes the dynamic instantly because toxic people feed on weakness, on hesitation, and on people who want to please. The mistake many make is thinking that boundaries need to be loud, angry, or dramatic, but in reality, the most powerful boundaries are often calm, quiet, and consistent. You don't have to explain yourself a dozen times, you don't have to over-justify why you're saying no, and you don't have to fight to prove your point. When you simply hold the line without wavering, you send a clear message. You respect yourself too much to allow nonsense in your life. Toxic people will test you. They will push, guilt, trip, or try to make you feel selfish for standing your ground. But that resistance is not proof that your boundaries are wrong. It's proof that they are necessary. People who benefit from you having no boundaries will always be the ones most upset when you create them. You woman knows this, and she doesn't flinch when the pushback comes. Boundaries also work as a filter. They reveal very quickly who respects you and who doesn't. Healthy people will acknowledge and even admire your standards, while toxic people will become frustrated, dismissive, or try to find new ways to cross the line. In either case, the boundary gives you clarity. You no longer waste time wondering about someone's intentions because their reaction to your limits shows you exactly where they stand. This saves you from deeper entanglements with people who would otherwise pull you into cycles of drama or disrespect. Boundaries allow you to step back and say, "I don't need to fix you, I just need to protect me." That mindset alone disarms the manipulative tactics toxic people rely on. Another critical element is that boundaries must be enforced consistently. It's not enough to say no once and then give in later because someone pressures you or makes you feel guilty. The moment you break your own boundary, you teach the toxic person that your line can be crossed if they push hard enough. You women understand that their strength comes not from the initial declaration, but from the follow-through. When you are consistent, you become untouchable because no matter how many times someone tries to manipulate you, they hit the same unmovable line. Over time, toxic people either remove themselves from your life because they realize they can't control you, or they adjust because they know you won't bend. Either outcome is a win for you. At its core, setting boundaries is not about being unkind or cold. It's about valuing yourself enough to decide what you will accept and what you won't. It's about choosing peace over chaos, clarity over confusion, and strength over weakness. Every time you draw a line and stand behind it, you reinforce your worth not only to others, but to yourself. And when you hold those boundaries with quiet confidence, you don't just protect your energy, you project power. Silence is one of the most underestimated tools of power. especially when dealing with toxic people. Many assume that strength means meeting every attack with equal force, that every insult requires a comeback, and that every provocation demands a response. But you women understand that silence can deliver a far louder message than words ever could. Toxic people thrive on reaction. They want to see you flustered, angry, or defensive because your emotional response is their fuel. The moment you give them that energy, you confirm that they still have control over you. By choosing silence, you deny them that satisfaction and instead reclaim control for yourself. Silence is not weakness, it's strategy. It signals that you are not going to play the game on their terms. When you remain silent in the face of toxicity, you strip away their power to escalate. Toxic people want conflict because conflict keeps you entangled with them. They will push buttons, stir drama, and create scenarios designed to make you engage. The less you engage, the less influence they have. This doesn't mean you avoid every confrontation or let someone mistreat you without consequence. It means you become intentional about when you speak and when you don't. Silence communicates that not every provocation deserves space in your world. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is the one you never say. There is also a psychological strength in silence. When you don't rush to defend yourself, explain yourself, or retaliate, you create an atmosphere of uncertainty for the toxic person. They expect you to react. They rely on it. Your silence disrupts their script. It forces them to sit with themselves, to wonder what you're thinking, to feel the discomfort of not being able to control your response. That discomfort is power, and it belongs to you. People often think silence is passive, but in reality, it can be deeply active. It shifts the energy in the room and unsettles the person trying to provoke you. In practice, silence doesn't just mean not speaking. It also means choosing not to feed into unnecessary arguments, not to respond to manipulative messages, and not to justify yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You women don't explain their worth, they demonstrate it. They don't get dragged into conversations designed to diminish them, they walk away. And when they do speak, their words carry more weight because they are not wasted on nonsense. Silence makes your voice stronger because you use it sparingly and with purpose. There's another dimension to silence that often gets overlooked. It gives you time. When you don't respond immediately, you give yourself space to assess the situation, to process your emotions, and to choose your next move deliberately instead of impulsively. Toxic people thrive on pulling you into quick, heated exchanges where you lose clarity and control. Silence creates distance. It allows you to step back, breathe, and decide whether the situation even deserves your energy. More often than not, you'll realize it doesn't. The power of silence also extends beyond toxic people. It impacts how you view yourself. By choosing silence instead of over-explaining or overreacting, you affirm to yourself that your peace is more important than winning an argument. You prove to yourself that you don't need to convince anyone of your value, and you don't need external validation to know who you are. That self-assurance radiates outward, and people notice. They see someone who is unshakable, someone who doesn't get rattled by drama, someone who commands respect without having to demand it. Toxic people want you loud, defensive, and emotionally unstable because that's when they win. Silence robs them of that victory. It allows you to maintain composure, conserve energy, and redirect your focus toward what actually matters. It's not about ignoring reality or pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to fight battles that are beneath you. And when a high-value woman chooses silence over chaos, she's not backing down, she's rising above. Respect is not something you ask for, beg for, or demand. It is something you consistently command through the way you live, act, and hold yourself. You women understand that toxic people are constantly searching for cracks in your armor, waiting for moments when you slip, react emotionally, or abandon your own standards. They look for inconsistencies because inconsistencies tell them that with enough pressure, they can make you fold. This is why consistency becomes the backbone of respect. When your words, actions, and boundaries align day after day, toxic people realize there is no weak spot to exploit. You become predictable in the best way possible, predictable in your strength, in your standards, and in your unwillingness to settle for less than what you deserve. The challenge many face is that they confuse respect with being liked. Toxic people will often use manipulation to blur that line, making you believe that if you just please them enough, agree with them enough, or bend your boundaries enough, they will finally treat you with respect. But respect doesn't come from compliance, it comes from clarity. A high-value woman knows that being respected is far more important than being liked, and she proves this through consistency. If she says she won't tolerate a certain behavior, she doesn't make exceptions because it's inconvenient to enforce the boundary. If she declares a value, she lives by it regardless of who's watching. Respect is built in the small, quiet moments where you choose discipline over comfort and integrity over compromise. Consistency also communicates self-worth. When you show up the same way, hold yourself to the same standards, and refuse to be shaken by manipulation, you teach others how to treat you without ever needing to explain it. Toxic people thrive when they can predict an outburst or a lapse in judgment, but when you respond consistently with calm strength, they're forced to adjust their approach or eventually to walk away. They realize they cannot bait you into chaos, and in that realization, their power over you diminishes. Respect grows not because you demanded it, but because your behavior left no other option. Another critical layer is that consistency is not only about how you treat others, but also how you treat yourself. You women don't just set standards for the outside world, they apply those same standards inward. If you expect respect but constantly talk down to yourself, neglect your own needs, or break promises to yourself, you undermine your own credibility. People notice that. Respect begins with how you carry yourself when no one is watching. It's in the discipline to uphold your own commitments, the strength to keep your word to yourself, and the refusal to abandon your values when life tests you. The consistency you practice internally becomes the foundation for the respect you command externally. Consistency also builds trust. Others know exactly what to expect from you, and that predictability is powerful. Toxic people may not like you, but they will respect you because they realize there is no room for negotiation when it comes to your standards. Even those who once tried to manipulate you will eventually adjust their behavior because they learn quickly that manipulation doesn't work on someone who is grounded in consistency. Many underestimate how exhausting it is for toxic people to continually test someone who won't break. Each attempt requires energy on their part, and when they realize that your consistency holds every time, they eventually stop wasting their effort. What remains is either a shift in how they engage with you or their complete withdrawal from your life, both of which protect your peace. Consistency is not flashy. It doesn't draw attention in the way dramatic confrontations do, but its quiet power is far more effective. It doesn't just earn you respect in the short term, it sustains it in the long run. Respect rooted in consistency is unshakable because it cannot be faked, rushed, or manipulated. It is built moment by moment, choice by choice, action by action. Toxic people cannot dismantle it because it's not based on their approval, it's based on your discipline. And when you live that way, you stop chasing respect and start commanding it. Detachment is one of the strongest shields a you woman can carry when facing toxic people because it removes their greatest weapon, the ability to control your emotions. Toxic people thrive on pulling you into their chaos, making you feel responsible for their moods, or tricking you into believing that their opinion of you defines your worth. The moment you detach, you take that weapon out of their hands. Detachment doesn't mean you stop caring about people or become cold and indifferent. It means you stop allowing someone else's dysfunction to dictate your peace of mind. It's the understanding that you cannot control how others act, but you can always control how you respond. That is where your power lies. Detachment begins with clarity. You recognize that toxic behavior is more about the other person than it is about you. Their manipulation, anger, or negativity is a reflection of their own unresolved issues, not a reflection of your value. Hi, Val. You women don't internalize toxic energy because they know their worth is not up for debate. Instead of reacting impulsively to every jab, insult, or passive-aggressive comment, they step back mentally and emotionally. This step back creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space is freedom. Freedom to decide whether to engage, freedom to redirect their energy elsewhere, and freedom to rise above. The beauty of detachment is that it disarms the toxic person's strategy. Most of their tactics are designed to provoke, to hook you, to pull you into a back and forth that leaves you drained while they feel empowered. When you don't bite the bait, you frustrate them. You deny them the emotional payoff they're seeking. Silence, calmness, and a steady demeanor are unsettling to people who thrive on drama because they cannot manipulate what they cannot move. Over time, detachment makes you uninteresting to toxic people. If they cannot stir up chaos within you, they will eventually move on to easier targets. Detachment is also an act of self-respect. It's choosing not to tie your identity to how someone treats you. It's refusing to let toxic people rent space in your mind and heart. Too often, people waste energy replaying toxic interactions, obsessing over why someone acted the way they did, or trying to decode hidden meanings in their words. Hi, Val, you women detach from that cycle. They don't spend hours analyzing behavior that doesn't deserve analysis. They understand that the more you focus on toxic people, the more power you give them. Detachment takes that power back and redirects it into areas that actually serve your growth and well-being. One of the most liberating parts of detachment is emotional neutrality. You no longer swing between anger, guilt, or frustration when someone crosses a line. Instead, you respond with calm certainty, knowing that their behavior doesn't define your reality. This neutrality is intimidating to toxic people because it strips them of leverage. They cannot guilt you into compliance, they cannot anger you into reaction, and they cannot confuse you into submission. You become untouchable not because you fight harder, but because you simply refuse to fight at all. Detachment also provides clarity in decision making. When you're emotionally entangled with someone toxic, your choices often come from a place of fear, obligation, or desperation. When you detach, you see the situation for what it truly is without the fog of emotional manipulation. That clarity allows you to set firmer boundaries, to walk away when needed, and to invest your time and energy only in relationships that are healthy and reciprocal. In the end, detachment is not about running from people or situations. It's about standing so firm in your own peace that nothing external can shake it. It's about knowing that you don't need to prove yourself, defend yourself endlessly, or sacrifice your well-being to accommodate someone else's dysfunction. Hi, Val, you women handle toxic people by practicing detachment not as avoidance, but as mastery over their own emotional state. This mastery makes them unshakable, unbothered, and deeply free. Hi, Val, you woman understands that mirroring toxicity only pulls her down to the very level she has worked so hard to rise above. Toxic people thrive on conflict, on seeing others abandon their principles and engage in the same destructive behavior they themselves display. When you mirror them, you validate their approach and give them the satisfaction of dragging you into their chaos. But when you rise above, you break the cycle. You show that power lies not in matching negativity, but in maintaining dignity and control even in the face of provocation. This ability to elevate rather than imitate is what separates those who get consumed by toxic dynamics from those who command respect and maintain their peace. Choosing not to mirror toxicity doesn't mean allowing people to mistreat you. It doesn't mean staying silent when action is necessary or pretending harmful behavior is acceptable. Instead, it means responding in a way that reflects your values, not theirs. Hi, Al. You women operate from a place of self-respect and clarity, which means they don't allow someone else's bad behavior to dictate their own. If a toxic person lashes out, they don't respond with equal anger. If someone tries to manipulate them, they don't play along with the game. They recognize that every reaction is a choice, and by choosing differently, they remain in control. One of the dangers of mirroring toxicity is that it erodes your own sense of identity. Every time you meet disrespect with disrespect, cruelty with cruelty, or manipulation with manipulation, you step further away from who you truly are and closer to the very behavior you despise. Toxic people want this. They want to blur the line so that the conflict becomes about both of you rather than about their destructive patterns. When you refuse to mirror them, you hold onto your integrity. You make it clear that you will not compromise your character to match their dysfunction. That refusal is powerful because it reminds them and yourself that your values are non-negotiable. Another strength in not mirroring toxicity is that it allows you to remain unpredictable. Toxic people often rely on patterns. They know how most people will react when insulted, manipulated, or attacked. They expect anger, defensiveness, or retaliation. When you respond with calmness, composure, or even indifference, you disrupt their plan. This disruption unsettles them because it shows that you are not operating within their control. You are not reacting, you are choosing, and choice is the essence of power. By elevating rather than reacting, you remain the one in charge of the dynamic, forcing them to adapt to your standards instead of you falling into theirs. There's also an element of influence in this approach. When you refuse to mirror toxicity, you set an example of strength for others around you. People notice how you handle yourself, how you remain composed when others would crumble or lash out. This inspires respect and, in some cases, encourages others to adopt the same posture. Your calmness becomes contagious in the same way toxicity is, but instead of spreading chaos, you spread composure and strength. Hi, Al. You women lead by example, and rising above toxicity is one of the clearest demonstrations of true leadership. It's also important to acknowledge that refusing to mirror toxicity doesn't mean suppressing your emotions. Hi, Val, you women still feel hurt, anger, or frustration when mistreated, but they channel those emotions constructively rather than destructively. They may walk away, enforce a boundary, or cut ties completely, but they do so from a place of strength, not reaction. They process their emotions privately and act with intention publicly. This balance allows them to honor their feelings without letting those feelings control their behavior. Ultimately, never mirroring toxicity is about ownership. You own your actions, your energy, and your character. You refuse to hand those things over to someone else, no matter how badly they want to provoke you. Toxic people may win small battles when they bait others into negativity, but they cannot win against someone who simply refuses to engage on their level. A hive, Hal, you woman doesn't fight in the mud because she knows her place is higher ground. And by staying there, she doesn't just protect her peace, she proves that true power is not in reacting, but in rising above.